Hey guys, what is up? This is Matthew Davis, me once again. Welcome back to another movie review, continuing on with my horror movie review series. This time I'm going to be reviewing Sleepaway Camp. Now this film came out in 1983, which next year will make it its 40th anniversary, yeah. Now in this film we follow two cousins who are going to a camp, and everybody in there is a complete jerk. Especially to the one character, Angela, who's like the quiet cousin, though she meets this boy, and they start getting a relationship together, while later on down the line, people start getting murdered by this unknown killer. Like, you never see his or her face. All that you know is that people are getting killed, and nobody notices, but they do see the dead bodies, so of course they have to find out who exactly is murdering people. Now, yeah, this is an 80s slasher film, which slasher films were very big in the 80s. Like, of course, the Friday the 13th series, Nightmare on Elm Street, Child's Play. It was a pretty big decade for the slasher genre, and this film was no different, coming out a few years after the first Friday the 13th. So, yeah, this would seem like it would be on the same lines as Friday the 13th, but it really isn't. It isn't as extremely violent as the Friday the 13th series, but I will say I actually enjoyed this movie quite a bit more than some of the other Friday the 13th films. Like, when it comes to Friday the 13th, you know what, why am I even talking about? I'm talking about Sleepaway Camp. But I can simply say that watching this a second time, first time I watched it, I was like 17 or 18. I just heard that this movie was supposed to be pretty good, and to this day, I still think it's pretty good. I mean, what really makes this movie unique is how the character Angela is just so mysterious. Like, you know something is up with her. And with a horror film like this, you wouldn't possibly think that you would be actually knowing what the other characters in here are like. Because while, like I mentioned before, there isn't that many murders, I actually enjoyed what was happening on screen. Like, people are just being complete dicks to each other. And especially with the cousins and stuff, you know, she gets picked on a lot. The fact that we don't know that much about her, and the fact that she acts a little strange, and she doesn't really do much throughout the film other than get into a relationship with this one guy, and you got the one boy cousin who's trying to look after her. Both of them actually have quite a weird past together. And I'm not going to say what it is, but really, what really makes this movie work is how it ends. That ending, if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, the ending really makes this movie memorable. It's something that Friday the 13th pulled off in the first movie, but not really any other movie after that. Like, to think that a film like this would have such a crazy ending that it's actually probably the most memorable thing about the movie. And the kills themselves, they're entertaining. There's definitely a lack of gore, and 80s films definitely are known for having a lot more gore in them, but the lack of gore really never bothered me, as I thought some of the kills were pretty cool. Like, there's this one with an iron, like one of those hair iron things that girls use, and one involving a giant pot, like a chef, and a giant pot just falls over, giving him tons of burns all over his body. For some reason, he actually managed to survive that. Just, he has, like, tons of 30-degree burns all over his body. And I actually enjoyed what some of the characters were doing on screen, even if their performances really aren't all that memorable. Especially, like, I wouldn't necessarily say the camp counselors, all adults. Like, there's this one old adult guy who I think is hitting on one of the girls, and later down the line beats the living crap out of a younger guy because he thinks he's the killer. Okay, spoiler, by the way, but it's a really old film, so it really shouldn't matter that much. Yeah, it isn't on the exact same lines of something like Nightmare on Elm Street or Child's Play, as I feel like characters in that film are a bit more rootable because there really isn't that many heroines to root for. The movie did spawn a franchise, which I'm probably not going to watch the other movies because I've heard they're not that good, but yeah. But in the end, Sleepaway Camp, I think, is a really enjoyable slasher. Even if it isn't as violent, it's not a long film, so it's pretty straightforward. But its lack of kills definitely makes it not as entertaining for some. But for me, it never bothered me. I enjoyed what was happening on screen. I was actually really entertained. And kind of found it a bit funny how other characters were treating others. It's definitely a more mean-spirited slasher film, but it's a slasher film, so what would you expect? And I like how it doesn't show exactly who the killer is until like much later, and it definitely keeps viewers like wanting to know. And it became a cult classic over the years, pretty much why it gained a franchise. So yeah, it's a really unique film. Definitely not as memorable as others, but it's definitely memorable for its ending. And as a film itself, I still have a pretty fun time with it. It's definitely not as rewatchable as other horror films of the 80s, but it's still a really solid one nonetheless. Thank you guys so much for watching. Halloween is almost here. I'm not sure if I'm going to be doing anything big, but I'll probably just review another movie. But yeah, anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Word out.